You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm Mess. I'm here with my co-host Ryan, and you're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40k, and I'm the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. So Ryan, what is today's topic?
Oh, you know what today's topic is, Mez. I've been
I actually
waiting
do.
for this one. Today we're talking about the Siege of Terra, the end of the
Yes.
Horus Heresy, and we're going to cover the end result of this, the aftermath, I guess, the ramifications caused by by the Horus Heresy. So, as we went through last time, we covered the Istvan 5 drop site massacre, which led 3 legions to basically not being able to help defend Terra. They also set up a bunch of stuff to keep other legions out of the fight. So, the Dark Angels were heavily damaged, so Lionel Johnson's legion basically couldn't be involved. And Reboot Gilliman and the Ultramarines had the same thing. They were heavily damaged and basically couldn't be involved. So they were either too far away, or they were delayed, or they were too damaged to help. So you basically just had 3 legions protecting Terra. So, the way this starts is Horus masses his forces to siege Terra. It has his Sons of Horus Legion. It has the Dark Mechanicum, so the Mechanicum on Mars that have turned traitor, with Titan Legions. They have traitor Imperial Army troops. They have Angron and his World Eaters, Fulgrim and his Emperor's Children, Magnus and his Thousand Sons, Mortarion and his Death Guard, the Iron Warriors, some more Marines from the Word Bearers, and the Night Lords, who, because they were the 2 that were involved in fighting the Dark Angels and the Ultramarines, they also weren't at full power, or they weren't all there. They still did have some of their troops involved, though. So that's a lot of dudes to try and take over Earth. And to defend it, we had Rogal Dorn and his Imperial Fists, who had been there for a long time, building defenses and like bulwarking the Imperial Palace and all that stuff. So they did have a good chance of defending, purely because they had those dudes as the ones doing it. They had like entrenched themselves. You also had Sanguinius and his Blood Angels, and Jagatai Khan and his White Scars. You had the Emperor's Custodian Guards, who are better than Space Marines, but not as good as the Primarch. You have the Sisters of Silence, the ones that act as like null fields for void nonsense. You had the Loyalist Titan Legions. You had the Knights, which are the smaller versions of the Titans. You had the Legio Cybernetica, and you had the Scutari, which are all units of the Mechanicum from Mars. And then they also had basically every single human who could hold a gun conscripted into defense and handed a gun. So there was probably more people on the Terran side, I'll be honest, but the quality of troops on the traitor side was much better.
Yeah, it's a bit of an uneven battle.
Marines. Yeah, it was an uneven battle, pretty heavily. There was always a thing where Horus always said to Rogal Dorn that he never wanted to see their legions fight each other, because Horus's troops were the masters of assault and invasion, and Rogal Dorn's troops were the masters of fortification and defense. So it was like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. And that's exactly the situation they've ended up in. Which is very funny. So the siege began with orbital warfare. So Horus basically just used his fleet to bombard the crap out of Earth. But they mainly focused on the palace itself. But more than anything, it was just to like make a point that that's what they were doing, basically. But it did basically nothing to the palace because it's so heavily shielded, as you would imagine. But you also had all the orbital defenses on the planet firing back. So it was neither were really doing a hell of a lot to each other, but the Terran defenses were doing more to the fleet than the fleet was to the palace. All the while, the Emperor was stuck on his throne. Like, he couldn't leave because otherwise it would take down all like the demonic warding and stuff. But him being there, obviously he was only there to produce this like protection field, I guess, to cancel out all the chaos nonsense, to stop demons coming in. which also meant that basically the enemy Primarchs couldn't land on the planet, otherwise it would, like, take away their chaos nonsense. Fulgrim at this point was just straight up a demon, so he would just be, like, removed from the palace, worried to enter. Which is quite funny, actually. So they had to find a way around that as well. Eventually, Mortarion was the one that guided the first, like, Space Marine-based ground assault. They had been sending random troops and stuff, but they eventually let Mortarion be the one to take the lead. Horus had promised him that he would be the first one to take the ground. Unfortunately, Angron, being that he's just a really angry guy, was desperate to get onto the field and just start ripping people apart with his bare hands. So he went mental after they sent Mortarion first. And because he was causing so much trouble, they just locked him in a Tesseract vault. A Tesseract vault is a little tiny, like, hand-sized pyramid thing that is like an extra-dimensional space. It's like a little pocket dimension. And it's just this ever-shifting labyrinth. So they just locked him in one of them because he was causing too much trouble.
Wish I could do that to
I know,
some people.
it'd be great, right?
Yeah.
I need one of them.
I need one of them. So I'll take two.
Just in case.
That is my.
So Mortarion's troops almost broke the loyalist lines around the palace until Jagatai Khan, who ignored Dorn's orders to stay in the palace, took to the field with his legion on jet bikes. And because they were just flying around the battlefield at like Mach 12 and just gunning people down as well and running people over and all that stuff, they were enough of a distraction and they punched enough holes through the enemy lines that they did manage to like push them back and stop them from like massing in force and being able to use proper tactics.
Yeah.
Because they're so fast and they're so like scattered and all over the place, you can barely hit them. And they can hit a lot of you, and they basically just need to be a distraction and in the way to succeed, which they did pretty well. But after, like, he killed dozens upon dozens of Mortarion's guys, but eventually he was, like, knocked off of his bike. The Khan was knocked off of his bike and was stabbed with a poisoned sword. So that was bad. So Sanguinius had to he basically strided out of the palace with his sanguinary guard, like his elite bodyguards, and saved Jagatai Khan, just dragged him back in. Luckily, the poison that was in him was cancelled out as soon as he was back inside the Emperor's like field of protection, because it was a chaos-based poison, so it was just like deleted, and he was basically fine after that, which is good.
That's good. And he heals fast.
He does heal fast. So as soon as there was no poison, he was ready to go again, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's OP, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're all like Wolverine.
Yeah. Yeah, the healing is just instant.
Yeah, basically.
Why can't I have that?
I know, right? So the traitors deployed siege engines after this and managed to take the trenches around the palace. That was going to be the end of this bit of my notes, but I found something funny in it. So the Blood Angels' first captain killed the acting Death Guard leader on top of the walls, just like outside the palace, and then for some reason he just threw his corpse off the wall. It's just a thing these people do. Like Horus has chucked through so many people off of walls and towers. It's a recurring theme, apparently.
It's good.
It's a cool idea. There's another one comes up in this. Sanguinius starts it, but it just becomes a gimmick as well. So the traitors now deployed Angron. But obviously he was raging at everyone. Anything he saw he was going to kill, because they locked him in a ever-shifting maze while he was already angry. So do you want to know how they got him down to the planet?
Never know.
They put the Tesseract Vault thing in an airlock, let him out of it, then opened the airlock and just yeeted him at the planet. So he hit the planet as a flaming flesh meteor.
For fuck's sake.
Which only stood to make him angrier.
Yeah.
So he hit the ground feral. Oh, God. I love that part as well.
Whatever works, man. Whatever works.
That's it, whatever works. So the traitors managed to take a docking port, allowing some of their ships to land and basically feed traitor troops directly into the palace, like within their protection. So, one of the ships that arrived had the World Eaters captain on it. Who the World Eaters are Angron's guys, so they're all raging and they're all just like brute force, like mental, like nut jobs in combat. And at this point, he was like infused with Korn's strength. So he was basically a demon that ran around the battlefield at this point,
Oh, God.
which looked bad until Rogal Dorn walked out and basically just slapped him like a bug. Everyone was like, "Oh, this guy's really dangerous," and Dorn was like, "No, he's not."
I got this.
Just squished him into the ground. So this whole time, Magnus and a bunch of his dudes have been performing all these weird rituals to try and like weaken the Emperor's like field of protection that he had going on. And he ended up reducing it down to just shielding the throne room,
Okay.
which is not good. So demons started appearing within, like inside the palace, which is really bad. And on the battlefield, you had demonic hordes running the battlefield along with the traitors now, which is really
Yeah.
bad. The traitors managed to find a weakness in one of the main gates, the Saturnine Gate, and Dorn only had enough troops to protect 3 out of 4 major locations, and one of the locations was a spaceport. But because there was a traitor fleet in orbit, they had no reason to have it, so he just let them take the spaceport and protected the other 3. And the gate that they had found like a weakness in, he set up traps there because he knew they were going to go for it. He was like, they'll definitely notice this. So Abaddon was leading the ground forces for Horus, his first captain, was leading the ground forces, along with Angron. And the team, Dorn set up kill teams at this gate, waiting for the enemies to breach it because there was an obvious weakness in it. And he put Nathaniel Garrow, the guy who escaped to warn them, and Gaviel Loken, the member of the Mournival that was loyalist that tried to kill Abaddon, and Abaddon thought was dead, in charge of the kill teams at this gate. So Abaddon breaks through and basically just gets gunned down by a dead man. I've just got a bit in my notes that just says "fuck you, Abaddon" right after that. So around this time, a contingent of Dark Angels that they had managed to mass after their fight, that they had been heavily damaged, managed to turn up. So you got a reinforcement of about 10,000 Dark Angels joined the battle, which obviously helped skew things back in the Loyalist favour a bit.
Yeah.
Then Magnus, who has been doing all the sneaky shit this whole time, sneaks himself into the palace. And because it turns out when the Emperor banished him during his little, like, trying to warn him thing, a section of his spirit was left there. So he wanted it back. And when he got there, he basically found out from Malkador that he wasn't getting it back. So Magnus murdered Malkador the Sigillite, the Emperor's right-hand man.
What?
He just straight up murdered him.
What?
Yeah. So then he then sneaks into the throne room because he goes in through this like underground cave system or through the dungeons, but there's a secret passage into the throne room. So he sneaks into the throne room and ends up face to face with the Emperor, and the Emperor gives him a last chance to turn loyal again, to turn away from chaos. But because all of the Thousand Sons are now like dust in their suits, and that's pretty weird, the Emperor's like, look, you can come back to us, but we need to purge your legion. We'll start again. We'll get you new guys. But Magnus, his whole reason for doing any of this was because he wanted to protect his legion. So he was like, the fuck you will.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and then out of nowhere, and I swear to God, you need like the John Cena music for this, Vulcan just appears and starts kicking Magnus's ass in the throne room.
What?
Yeah, it's like, you need the actual John Cena music, and then Vulcan just comes in and bodies him. But so Vulcan appeared, kicked Magnus's ass, and as it was coming to an end, Magnus like actually accepted chaos and turned into like half demon, half Primarch. But because he was inside the Emperor's throne room, which is where the like anti-demonic warding was still working, he was just immediately banished from the palace. So that worked out quite well. Malkador was resurrected. A woman sacrificed herself to bring him back to life. So Malkador came back to life.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened, but it did. So the war goes on for a while longer. People are dying on both sides pretty heavily. And the traitors end up making a push for the last gate in the loyalist defenses. So like the actual like gate to the palace, basically. And Magnus actually joins the traitor side on the battlefield at this point. And because there's demons everywhere, there is a big old one called a Khorne Bloodthirster. It looks like the Balrog from Lord of the Rings, honestly. It's gigantic, red, horned, has wings and a tail, has a gigantic axe. Like they're like Khorne's main dudes, you know what I mean? They're his big guys.
Yeah.
One of them ends up locked in battle with Sanguinius, but it's like they're fighting with sword and axe in the sky because they can both fly. And after a while, like, because it takes a long time, but eventually Sanguinius just grabs the thing and snaps its spine over his knee. That becomes a recurring theme, by the way, for the record.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Sanguinius gets a bit messed up from this, but like he's doing okay. But he kills the greater demon. Then Horus receives word that the Space Wolves, who were obviously really far away, burning Prospero to the ground and stuff to take out Magnus, the Ultramarines and the Dark Angels have all like mashed their troops together again and are en route to Terra. So he's now got 3 legions he thought were out of the game coming to kick his ass from behind. Because they're all gonna like come into the system in space, obviously, and be able to just blow his ships out of the sky. So he'd be fighting on 2 fronts then, which would make him at a severe disadvantage. So he panics and he's like, last ditch effort, I've got one last chance. And he lowers the shields on his flagship as like a taunt to the Emperor, being like, come on, come and get me. Prove you can do it. Prove you're better. Like, face to face. Don't let the troops end this. Let us end this. And the Emperor cannot avoid that. He has to do it. He knowingly walks into the trap.
Yeah.
But someone has to be on the throne to stop the demons flooding in. So Malcador takes his place on the throne.
Yeah.
Then
Wait, didn't he die? No,
he was resurrected. This is why he was resurrected.
Yeah. Okay. So, but for this specific reason, he was okay.
Probably
makes sense.
For plot purposes, yes. So the Emperor, Sanguinius, Rogal Dorn, an elite set of Space Marines in Terminator armor, the tank armor, and a bunch of the custodian guards teleport onto Horus's flagship, and they all split up, I think they get teleported in weird different places. But regardless, they then begin hunting for Horus on the command deck of the flagship, and Sanguinius is the one that finds him first. And these two are the best of friends. Like, they were actually brothers. So this is terrible for them. But Horus offers Sanguinius one last chance to join him, and he refuses. So they just get into this big brutal combat. Horus, unfortunately, is bolstered by all 4 Chaos Gods at this point, so he was way too powerful for Sanguinius, and he does defeat Sanguinius. So the Emperor arrives next at the throne room, at the bridge of the ship, and he just sees Sanguinius's mangled corpse at Horus's feet. And Horus begins to mock the Emperor, claiming that he is the rightful ruler of the galaxy, and that he had bound Chaos to his will. And the Emperor's like, no, Chaos is using you. You're a moron. Because obviously the Chaos Gods do not bend to Horus's will.
You are merely a vessel.
You're
merely
a
vessel, yeah.
Obviously explaining that just pissed Horus off.
I mean, yeah, could imagine.
Just fair. So they started to fight, and it was a battle of both like physical and psychic combat at the same time. But with Chaos on his side, the Emperor found Horus to be a severe challenge. They were almost matched. But after everything, the Emperor still couldn't bring himself to kill Horus. He still thought of him as like a son. He couldn't do it. So because he was like pulling punches and stuff, Horus messed him up, right? He crushed the Emperor's windpipe, cut the tendons in his wrist, broke most of his ribs, plucked out his left eye, set his hair on fire for some reason, lifted him up, broke his back over his knee, like Sanguinius did to the demon, and then pulled one of his arms out of its socket. The Emperor gets messed up, man. So the Emperor is lying on the floor, basically just broken, and then the Emperor like looks up to find one man standing in front of Horus, a lone man standing in the way. So who it is changes a little bit depending on who you ask. The official story is that it's a custodian guard. So one of the custodian guards has like found the throne room and basically just charged Horus. But there are other stories, depending on who you ask, that it was just one random soldier from the Astro Militarum who has like seen this and went, "Nah, enough's enough. This is bullshit. We're not doing the right thing here," and went to stand against Horus alone.
But what would he essentially be able to do?
Absolutely nothing. But neither could the custodian.
I mean, fair point.
Sanguinius couldn't do shit. A human or a custodian aren't going to do shit. So Horus ends up just laughing and then just blows them to pieces with a psychic blast.
Oh, okay, fair.
But this act of defiance showed the Emperor what Horus had really became. It was the thing that gave him clarity that Horus was not his son anymore. He was not the person he knew. And it also showed it reminded the Emperor what he was fighting for. This whole crusade had been for humanity. And Horus is not for humanity, no matter what. And he realized he has to kill him. The Emperor used that slight distraction of whoever it was that he killed to like focus all of his power and basically just shot one psychic bolt clean through Horus's heart.
What?
So Chaos then realizes that Horus has failed and they take away their power and their control from him. So sanity returns to Horus as he's like standing there with a hole in his heart. And
about to die.
yeah. And he realizes what he's done and he begs the Emperor to finish him off. So the Emperor just focused all of his power and destroyed him. But not just physically, it like tore his soul apart as well.
Yeah, so that's confirmed death. Like no.
Yeah, there ain't no coming back from that.
Thing. Nah.
Like Ferrus Manus, his spirit's probably still messing around somewhere after he got decapitated.
Yeah.
Horus ain't. That's for damn sure.
He's confirmed dead.
Yeah, he's confirmed very dead. Like, not even a little bit, he's very dead. So Rogal Dorn and the elite Terminator troops turn up at the bridge and find the Emperor basically lying there dying, surrounded by his two dead sons. And he asks Dorn to take him to the throne. So Dorn carries the Emperor back to the throne room on Terra.
Mm-hmm.
Since Chaos relieved its hold on Horus, they basically just started a retreat overall. So all the demonic hordes that were fighting on Terra just disappeared. So it just left all the traitor legions just like, wait, where did half our troops go? So they started retreating as well. So obviously you've got all the Blood Angels and everything fighting on Terra, just started opening fire into their backs. So the traitors took heavy losses in their retreat. Also, the Blood Angels were afflicted with visions of Sanguinius's horrifying death, and they flew into the Black Rage.
Oh god.
So a lot of Blood Angels just went feral.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. So they now have the Black Rage going on for their legion. And the last part of the Siege of Terra. Upon arriving at the throne room, they find Malkador the Sigilite has been reduced to a pile of dust on the throne due to the strain of like powering it. And once sat on the throne, the Emperor speaks his last words, entrusting the Imperium to the remaining Primarchs. For 10,000 years after that point, the Emperor has sat silent on the Golden Throne, with thousands of Psykers being sacrificed daily to provide his body the energy it needs to keep Terra safe.
What?
Yeah. The Emperor sits silent vigil, entombed forever on the Golden Throne. He's now referred to as the Corpse Emperor because his body is just a rotted mass.
Yeah. That's insane, though. I have a question, Ryan. Why, if it's essentially like he's just sitting there, why sacrifice so many souls?
because his body isn't healing or anything like that while he's stuck there, and it takes a massive amount of psychic power to do his job, basically, of keeping all the demons away from Terra. So apparently it takes about 1,000 psychers worth of energy every day to keep like that up and running.
Yeah, but like, is there no plan B in this? Like,
No, because this was never supposed to happen. There's no one else that can do it. Magnus was the only Primarch that was anywhere near as gifted as the Emperor with it worked. So
yeah,
I would argue they possibly could have done something about it had they had Magnus on side. They might have found a way to have him supported by like a constant group of living psychers or something like that, and just had it work that way. And then if they had had the Emperor not stuck on the throne, they might have been able to like get him back up to fighting strength and had him fix it or something like that. Or even then, Magnus might have figured out how to fix it and like, permanently if he were around. But they don't have anyone on hand because Malkador was the second most powerful psyker in the galaxy, I believe.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, so they don't have anyone that can do it that's even close to his level. So they have to just keep his body as a conduit, basically. Allegedly, he is technically still alive. He just doesn't speak or do anything.
Yeah, nah, he does a lot, Ryan.
Well, yeah, he does. There's actually a thing. The Golden Throne is also known as the Astronomicon. So within the warp, there is a glowing beacon of golden light shining from the exact location of Terra, because the throne produces this light within the warp, and they use it to navigate within the warp while they're traveling, because you have a point of reference now for where Terra is, so you know where to go based on that. That's another reason he has to be there, because he has to keep the light of the Astronomicon there as well. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the aftermath of this, and there's 3 parts that I'm going to talk about. The first one we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Primarchs in the aftermath of the Heresy. So we'll do the Loyalists first, because they're more interesting, I'll be honest. So in years to come, Rabute Gilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, ended up acting as Imperial Regent because he was the best military tactician they had. Also, the guy loves government. He loves bureaucracy.
He's good at 2 shoes.
He is, that's him. Before. So he ended up acting as the Imperial Regent in the Emperor's stead, and trying to keep everything running. They ended up basically starting what was called the Great Scouring, and they basically pushed all of the Chaos, the traitors, basically. They pushed all the Chaos Space Marines and everything back to the Eye of Terror, the hole Slaanesh punched in the galaxy.
Yeah.
So they aren't like strolling the galaxy everywhere anymore, which is good. Lionel Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, returned to his homeworld only to find his second in command had turned traitor. And in the battle that ensued, his planet was destroyed in a warp storm, and he is thought dead. Only the Emperor and the Watchers in the Dark know he is alive. He's basically in like a permanent state of sleep within the Dark Angel home base. So Lionel Johnson's out of the picture. Gilliman managed to kill either Alfarius or Omegon. Nobody knows which one it is. Leman Russ, the Space Wolves Primarch, chased a bunch of traitors into the Eye of Terror. Stories among the wolves say that Russ went on a quest to find a cure for the Emperor. His final words were he would return for the Wolf's Time, which is like their version of Ragnarok. It's the end of days. So Leman Russ has said that he will return at the end of everything.
Great. That's a bit too late for the Emperor, but still.
Yeah. Jagatai Khan disappeared while chasing Dark Eldar into the Webway portals. Rumor says he still fights there in the twisting maze of the Webway to this day, 10,000 years later.
Oh, God.
Vulcan just disappeared one day. The Salamanders believe he will return, though. Corvus Corax, the leader of the Raven Guard, he tried to rebuild his legion after the Dropsite Massacre, but he was in such haste to do so that he was tampering with the gene seed for his legion and caused massive mutations. So his troops, a lot of them became big hulking monstrous brutes. So he euthanized them all and then locked himself away in like his sanctum for a year. And when he finally left, he took a tiny little like space shuttle towards the Eye of Terror, and his last words were "Nevermore."
All right.
Yeah, so he's gone as well. Then while hunting Fulgrim, so Ruti Gilliman hunted down Fulgrim and tried to kill him, and ended up getting his throat slit. So he ended up getting interred in a stasis chamber on his homeworld of Macragge, inside the Temple of Corrections, I believe. So there are no loyalist Primarchs left.
Great.
Every loyalist Primarch is MIA, which is terrible, because now there's no one to lead the Imperium. As for the traitor Primarchs, Magnus rose to the rank of Demon Prince of Zinch, Angron became Demon Prince of Khorne, Mortarion became Demon Prince of Nurgle, Fulgrim became Demon Prince of Slaanesh, Lorgar and Perturabo are Demon Princes of Chaos Undivided, so no particular god. Conrad Kurz allowed himself to be assassinated. And, like we said, Alfarius or Omegon may or may not be dead. No one's really sure.
They had the better outcome, let's say it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, better. That depends on how you look at it, to be fair,
Yeah, the loyalists ain't doing too good, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
So, a couple more parts. The Codex Astartes is something we're going to talk about a little bit. So while Gilliman was in charge after everything that went down, he instated the thing called the Codex Astartes. It was essentially a set of rules for... it was just rules for war, basically, but also for like the control of soldiers and space marines and everything like that. So the main part of the Codex Astartes that we're going to talk about that's important is that Gilliman believed that no man should have the power to wield an entire legion at its full might, because it is enough power to basically destroy the galaxy, as Horus proved.
Yeah.
So part of the Codex Astartes was that all Space Marine legions would be disbanded into chapters of 1,000 Space Marines at most. And they would all be led by a chapter master. So this caused what was called the second founding, because the first founding was the original creation of all the chapters. Then this caused the second founding. There has been a lot of foundings since then where they made more chapters. But they're all 1,000 troops at max, basically. And each legion was split up into 1,000-man strong chapters with new names and soon new heritages. They all also had to have their own home planets and stuff like that. One chapter from each would keep the original name and their original leader. So at the time, Gilliman became the chapter master and Primarch of the 1,000 Space Marine strong chapter, the Ultramarines, because they kept the same name, and they also kept the same homeworld, but they end up with like the Aurora chapter, which are a different chapter, but they're still Ultramarines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then like the Space Wolves ended up with one that was the Space Wolves. Then they ended up with like the Wolves of Fenris and stuff like that. So they ended up with all being split up in different chapters. This actually was a really good idea in a way, because rather than having an entire Space Marine Legion all based on one planet, you had tons of chapters split up on like different homeworlds all across the galaxy. And they could all take on their own missions at their own time. 1,000 Space Marines is enough to handle most things. So it gave them a much wider net of coverage for the entire galaxy. So it worked out strategically as a pretty good decision, but a lot of the Primarchs and stuff were really unhappy about it. I'm pretty sure Lehman Ross basically just ignored it and just did his own thing anyway. So there are a bunch of new Space Marine chapters as well. By the time we get to the 41st millennia, there's tons of them. And there's also a really funny thing called the Cursed 21st, which was the 21st founding of Space Marine chapters, and they just are all terrible. Everything that could possibly go wrong in making Space Marines went wrong with these
Goes wrong.
guys. There's one chapter, I can't remember the name of them at the moment, but they're just depressed, and everything that bad that could happen to any human happens to these guys.
Oh,
The Lamenters, that's it.
elementary.
Yeah, they're just the most depressed guys in the galaxy, honestly.
Yeah, they didn't pass the vibe check, right?
Nah, they did not. But like every chapter within the 21st founding just went horribly wrong for one reason or another. It's really funny, and it's really sad at the same time. And the last part of this is the ecclesiarchy. So you now end up at a point in time where there is no one of actual power to run the galaxy in the Imperium's point of view.
Yeah.
Because there's no Primarchs, there's no Emperor, there's nothing. So without the Emperor or Gilliman in charge, the Imperial cult had obviously kept growing, especially since obviously the Emperor managed to like stop Horus's nonsense. So the belief in him as a god grew more and more and spread more and more. So he became the God Emperor, and an official religion formed around him.
Oh god.
Yeah, but that religion grew so much that they became quite powerful, got an official seat on the Lords of Terra, and they formed the new branch of the Imperial government. What was it? It's the... I can't remember the name of it, but it's essentially called the ecclesiarchy. But there's an Adeptus something, Adeptus Ministorum. That's it. It's the religious branch of the Imperial army. So they have priests and stuff now going around preaching about the Emperor as a god. And they ended up growing to such power that basically everyone in the Imperium, including the current Astartes, like Space Marines that are going around, they all believe the Emperor is a god. And they have like inquisitors and stuff that go around like burning heretics for not believing in the god Emperor. So I would like to point out, just for the sake of the hilarity of it, this is exactly what Lorgar wanted. The whole reason the heresy occurred was because Lorgar thought the Emperor was a god, and the Emperor disagreed. Then the heresy occurred, the Emperor won, and somehow Lorgar still wins out with everyone believing that he's a god. Oh, also, the holy text that they have as like their Bible is called the Lectitio Divinitatis. And it is based off of an ancient holy text by the 41st millennia. That holy book was the book that Lorgar wrote for his disciples to follow when he started believing the Emperor was the one true god. So they don't even realize, like they don't even know that their entire belief system is based off of the Book of Lorgar, the main text of the heretic that started the Horus Heresy and set the galaxy in flames. The irony of it is crippling. It's amazing. So what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Oh god. I mean, I'm still surprised about like I thought the Primarchs were kind of invincible, you know.
Yeah.
I'm still a bit baffled about like you said it's kind of like Game of Thrones. They don't mind killing off people, important people in this scenario. But yeah, I mean this is the better part of the story. Let me say it like that.
Oh god, yes, this is where it gets exciting.
Yeah.
So we're now at a point where, because you know who's evil and who's not and stuff like that, we can go on to do individual episodes about each Primarch, and we can do their whole stories in a bit more detail, and so you can learn about them properly. Or we can do individual legions, because a lot of the legions have cool stories regardless of their Primarch. Or we can move forward with the story and talk about like the 13th Black Crusade, and then go on to like the Plague Wars. These things are all they're all actually 40k stuff. We're still back in like 30k with the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, wasn't it like 35 or something like that?
Yeah, it's around there, yeah. So we've still got we've got a lot more we can talk about now. Now that you know how the galaxy ends up, we can flesh it
Yeah.
out in basically any direction you want. And we're also now free to talk about like the Necrons and stuff like that more, and all the other alien races, because there isn't that risk of accidentally spoiling something by
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
the current state of the galaxy, which is great.
yeah.
So this is the point I was excited to get to, because one, that's a great story, and two, it opens it up so that we can talk about basically anything you want now.
Yeah. I mean, I think like logically we should take it chronologically,
Yes.
if that makes sense. In terms of the storyline and
Yes,
yeah,
I believe the next major part of it would either be like the founding of the ecclesiarchy, because we can go into that a little bit, or we can leave that as like a vague sense and go towards the 13th Black Crusade, which is a bit of a jump though. But I don't know if there's many other major events that would be, overly exciting to talk about in the interim. There's a lot of things that
yeah,
go on that would probably be better to explain in other people's storylines, like major characters and stuff.
yeah,
Although I think this might be a good chance to like flesh out some other things before we continue with the story. So we could pick some legions and stuff, or an alien group, and talk about those in future episodes before we continue with more storyline.
yeah. I mean, it would be nice to get the listeners in and see what they would
It
like to
would be.
hear.
On that
Ooh.
topic, actually, there is something that we wanted to tell all of our listeners. As I'm sure some of you may know, there is a new Warhammer 40k game coming out. There's been a bunch announced recently. We just had Chaos Gate, which is about the Grey Knights fighting Nurgle's demons. There is also one called Dark Tide, not Black Tide, coming out in September, which is a 40k version of Vermintide. It's a hack and slash horde fighter game, but you play as Marines from 40k, as far as I'm aware. And we are going to be playing that. We will be streaming it on Twitch, and there'll probably be some videos on YouTube afterwards from that as well.
Yeah.
And also, they have just announced Rogue Trader, made by the company that made, I believe it's the company that made Pathfinder, which is another CRPG. Which is very exciting. Do you know what Rogue Trader is, Mez?
I'm not so sure, man.
Well, it'll play a bit like D&D, It's a big open world adventure-y game kind of thing, from a slightly top-down-ish view, where you get to like make your own character, develop your own skills, and do things the way you see fit to do them.
What was it called?
Rogue Trader.
Rogue Trader.
Yeah. But for the sake of this, because we're talking about it, I'm going to explain to you what a rogue trader is. So, a rogue trader is a type of person that exists in 40k, where basically you are sent out into the galaxy with a particular job to do, like a particular mission or whatever. But the main thing about these guys is that they are free to interact with aliens as they see fit. So you could come across a rogue trader on some random backwater planet that's doing whatever they're doing, and their crew might involve Eldar, orcs, and humans all working alongside each other, because they're not held to the same rules as everyone else. Their job is seen to be so far from like what is proper, because they're usually tasked with things that they have no business actually completing. So their methods in doing so are basically just like, you do you, bruv, just get us what we asked for kind of thing. So they are commonly found with alien races among them. So I believe the point of the Rogue Trader game is going to be that you can play as a Rogue Trader and also have your crew involve Xenos races, which would be very cool, because it would be one of the first times that the Xenos were shown as like protagonists in a 40k game.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for that, and we will be playing that too. I don't know the release date for that yet. I don't know if it's been announced, but we will definitely be playing that as well. It'll appear on YouTube and Twitch individually. I wanted to announce that for you guys so that you knew. We're also probably going to, well, by this point we'll probably have done some of it already actually by the time this goes up, but we will be doing some extra, out of the podcast nonsense for YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Which should be fun. We want to get Mez looking at some 40k memes.
Oh, God.
Now there's no risk of spoilers.
I'm down.
Hell yeah. But I think that'll cover us for today. Would you like to tie us out, Mez?
Sure want to. All right. Thank you guys for listening. And yeah, it's been me, Mess, and Ryan, and we will see you in the next one. Take care and peace.
But